Yeah, so I'm Birgit Koopmann-Holm. I am an associate professor at Clara University. I'll be talking about cultural differences in sympathy and compassion and noticing other suffering. So we look at compassion in terms of people's motivation to alleviate the suffering, and of course, first of all, noticing the suffering. So noticing suffering and then trying to alleviate the suffering. Ooh, long story. When I was in grad school at Stanford in my second year, my grandmother passed away. Oh. And I was very close to her. I had just visited her shortly before she passed, and then I came back and then she passed. And I received sympathy cards from people in the United States where I now was. I'm originally from Germany. So I looked at these cards and I thought, it's an interesting difference that I noticed. So at first I just felt this is so different from what I was used to. So the German sympathy cards, they're mainly black and white and they focus on the suffering. For instance, there are phrases on there like, words will not bring you comfort, we know that. So just very acknowledgement of the grief and the distress and the sadness. But these cards that I received then in the US were very different. They were colorful, in pastels, yes, but still very colorful cards and focusing so much on the positive. And I thought, that's interesting. And once I got out of the grieving period, I thought, this is something I want to study. This is an interesting phenomenon worth looking into. And that's what I did. So we gave participants in the US and in Germany, that's where we started out with, because I know German, I'm from Germany, so I know the culture quite well there as well. So we gave participants different options of which cards they would rather send to an acquaintance who had recently lost a loved one. And the cards were matched on many different dimensions, different colors, same colors, similar length of the text, but one card would focus more on the positive and one card would focus more on the negative. And we asked people, if you had an acquaintance who had just lost a loved one, which card would you feel more comfortable sending? So that's what we would ask. And then of course we wanted to know, because we did find cultural differences, I can go into that as well. But of course then we also wanted to know, why do these cultural differences exist? So we found that, as I experienced anecdotally, people in the United States felt more comfortable sending cards that focused on the positive, with phrases such as, memories will bring you comfort, and focusing basically on the silver lining. Whereas in Germany, we found that people felt more comfortable sending cards that focused more on the negative, such as words will not lighten a heavy heart, or this is so sad, in deep sadness. And we looked at how much people want to avoid feeling negative emotions. So this is all within the realm of Jeannie Tsai's affect valuation theory, where she distinguishes between ideal affect, which are the affective states people ideally want to feel, and actual affect, which are the affective states people actually feel on a daily basis or over the course of a typical week. We found, as predicted, that Germans want to avoid feeling negative less compared to people in the United States. And we found that this avoided negative affect, this degree to which people want to avoid feeling negative, can explain these cultural differences in which cards people find or people would feel more comfortable sending to an acquaintance. So because US Americans want to avoid feeling negative more compared to their German counterparts, they feel more comfortable sending a card that focuses on the silver lining and on the positive, because they don't want to feel negative. And they think, well, other people probably also don't want to feel negative, so I'm trying to focus on something. Even though this is a sad situation, I'm focusing on something that can bring them comfort and where they can focus on the positive. We started out looking at US Americans and comparing them to Germans, but we've done so much other work looking at other cultural contexts such as China, Ecuador, Mexico, Japan, and we find that in all these cultural contexts, people want to avoid feeling negative less compared to people in the United States. So the US really seems to be this outlier in how much they want to stay away from negativity, so getting at this toxic positivity. I think there's something really interesting going on in our culture, how much we focus on the positive and really want to avoid the negative. And in one study, we exposed participants to negative stimuli just as a manipulation task. And what we found was that in the US, when they were forced to look at these negative images, for them, these negative stimuli were actually more aversive compared to people in contexts that were more accepting of the negative. So just trying to stay away from these negative feelings seems to really backfire. Ironically, people feel worse. We also coded the cards that you can readily buy in German and US American stores. So I actually did go to all the stores in the Bay Area to buy all the sympathy cards that I could find in the stores. And it was a really interesting experience because I really went to the sympathy card section and picked every single card, put it in my shopping cart, and then checked out. The person at the checkout was very confused and she said, "Are you okay?" I'm like, "Yes, this is for a research study." So we coded these cards and found the same thing, that among these cultural products, these sympathy cards in the US, there were so many more positive words compared to the German cards. And in the German cards, they contained so many more negative words compared to the American cards. And what was also striking, when you go to these different sympathy card sections, in the US, it's called sympathy, right? And in Germany, when you actually go to these stores, it's called grief, it's Trauer. So it's the grief section. So very different ideas around what it means to show sympathy and to show compassion. Yeah, sure. This is in a US American context, so we should end with something positive. And I thought of a joke that is related to some of the things we just talked about. So we just talked about how people in different cultural contexts differ in the degree to which they want to avoid feeling negative. So we can think of the example of a scarecrow, right? A scarecrow was built to elicit fear, elicit negative emotions. Yet, despite the fact that the scarecrow is built to elicit fear, negative emotions, it still stands strong, and it's not going anywhere, and it does its job really well. And it does its job even so well that it won an award for that. Do you know why?
Why?
Because it's outstanding in its field.